The pinnacle of development, the galactic elites, were a people whose intelligence and technology had molded the galaxy for their empire, extended over many systems for millennia, and their ships and strength were uncontested. They believed they were the universe's natural rulers, a concept supported by each planet they conquered, and humanity was but another unimportant race that hardly merited notice. The phrases primitive, fragile, and technologically stunted were frequently used in the hallways of their ivory towers to characterize the species known as the galactic elites that lived on Earth for many years. Ignored humanity because Earth was on the outside of their enormous empire. Humans were allowed to use their resources on a small number of worlds, but even as humanity developed its technology and started to explore the stars, the elites were never viewed as a threat. Rejected their crew's advancement and the ineffectiveness of a few battles between elite and human exploration ships, counterpatrols only reinforced the idea that people could not compete with the power of the empire. The elites were not just. They were conceited and thorough in their contempt. Every battle they engaged in was planned, and their wins were guaranteed for a long time. Prior to firing a shot, they assessed their adversaries' vulnerabilities and broke down resistance with tremendous accuracy. They saw war as science and humanity's solution, not chaos. Its dependence on antiquated weapons and physical stamina was an outlier in their regimented worldview. What could a species with such rudimentary skills and erratic emotions could provide a problem when the first elites hardly responded to stories of human resistance on the outer colonies, although there were a few isolated acts of disobedience? To be anticipated in any empire, particularly in the recently conquered lands. Standard procedures were implemented, a small fleet was dispatched, compliance was enforced, and move on. But the elite started to take action as the news of defeats and drawn-out battles became more prevalent. Observe that they were planned tactical reactions rather than merely uprisings. These were expensive and took advantage of the terrain and guerrilla tactics. A specific planet that was strategically significant to the empire's aspirations for expansion became the center of human experiments. Its difficult environment and dense jungles were viewed as unimportant, minor barriers to be surmounted by the elites. A ship was dispatched with some profound leaders, including Royal Swords Awards, soul specialists. Using the best warriors and cutting-edge technology in the empire, the goal was to destroy the humans and protect the planet. The ruling class seized the chance to remind humanity of its role in the galaxy, and what they discovered on the planet was a well-coordinated band of human warriors, not a motley crew of rebels. Among them were the Marines, a division of the earthly military, renowned for their unwavering training and flexibility, weren't farmers with professional troops, trained to fight and live in the most hostile environments, whether they were miners using repurposed tools or pitchforks. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned in harsh circumstances, they possessed an element that the elites did not. In the face of uncertainty, the elites' first landing was flawless, with their DRO spacecraft descending with mechanical precision. Advanced drones and scanners were used to deploy troops in precise formations and start mapping the area. Recognizing heat signatures and possible dangers, they anticipated a brief interaction and outburst of opposition. Instead, the bush was silent before overpowering the humans. Humans had disappeared into the jungle after swallowing their electronics and having their sensors interfered with by the dense canopy. The initial encounter was disastrous, leaving the elites to negotiate uncharted territory. Master, a group of elite soldiers brandishing energy rifles and personal shields were ambushed along a rat wheel. They had been moving slowly along the small ravine, their scanners seeing no indications of life, and then abruptly, the lead soldier was shot. Chaos broke out as additional rounds rang out, each one piercing his shield and hitting a crucial spot in his armor. Finding its mark, the team had left by the time reinforcements showed there, leaving the elites in disbelief. The armor was made to withstand collisions, and shields were meant to be immune to crude ballistic weaponry. They were losing soldiers to a species they believed to be much superior to anything humanity could develop. Inferior, People were expected to either run away or perish instead of this happening, not respond with such accuracy and efficiency. And when further squads came into similar ambushes, the elites started to grow. Realizing they weren't facing a traditional foe, the humans refrained from charging or engaging in protracted firefights. They charged into confrontations they couldn't win, utilizing the terrain to their advantage with each strike. It was planned. Every shot was purposeful, and the elite's superior technology was worthless. In the middle of this turmoil, if they were unable to see their attacker or anticipate their moves, one human soldier's name emerged, intercepting communications from a Navy sniper known as his. His call sign had simply come to represent resistance, and his shots were he transformed the forest into his ally by making his movements untraceable and employing only pieces of his work, such as shot casings and blood trails, could be recovered from its thick forest to avoid detection by the elites. This sniper was more than just a soldier. He was a force multiplier, leading nowhere and the bodies of their finest men. Presence alone altered the battlefield's dynamics. The elites, who had previously been assured of their numerical and intelligence due to their technological superiority, they began to question every decision they made and increased the number of drones they deployed. Patrols and even dispatched professional hunters to find him, but in the end, as the struggle continued, he kept one step ahead of the elites. To experience a terror they hadn't felt in ages, and their well-planned tactics were dismantling their forces, who were once the model of efficiency and discipline, were reluctant to traverse the jungle because they knew that the sniper had altered the battlefield and that death could occur anywhere. The elites were losing what started out as an operation as it turned into a psychological war. For the first time, the galactic elites were unable to show that human resistance was ineffective. Compelled to acknowledge that their presumptions about humanity were incorrect and that this wasn't a species to be disregarded or undervalued. This species, which adapted, persevered, and battled with a persistence that the experts were unable to comprehend, and at the heart of it all stood a lone Marine sniper, demonstrating that even a well-placed shot may bring down the strongest empires. The conflict started precisely as anticipated, with the cosmic elites used technology that was far superior to that of humanity to deploy their soldiers with perfect coordination. They were aware that victory was certain and that their superior firepower and sophisticated strategies would be sufficient to overcome any opposition they had encountered from several species. More primitive than the last, and they had never faced such a challenge from humans before, whom they thought were the various elites easily landed their ships on the jungle-covered planet, and their men descended in silence. They thought it would be simple to hide anywhere they were in full war armor. Superior energy guns with vaporization capabilities were used to flush out their armaments. Drones that could map the environment and detect heat, as well as the squad's personal shields that repelled any projectile signature. Prior to the dispersion of human forces, this technical superiority had never let them down. Utterly outclassed and ill-prepared, yet upon initial contact, the tribes dropped impatiently off the map of man while the elites discovered they were in uncharted territory. They didn't rush into it because the humans didn't defend themselves at battle, but instead they disappeared into the woods, where the highly skilled elite scanners sufficient to pick up on even the smallest irregularity, yet every effort to find human positions was met with fail. The lush greenery and high canopy of the jungle engulfed their search attempts, obstructing their view, and the elites spent hours frantically adjusting their sensors as they swept through the jungle, through the bushes with meticulous accuracy. Yet the people continued to elude them, and the elites became agitated. Once a guarantee of supremacy, superior technology was now just one more barrier against. Because of human cunning, the elites weren't fighting like any other adversary they had ever faced. Instead of using brute might to charge in direct combat, they waited, and the elites fell into their trap. Then, without warning, A soldier in the vanguard of one of the elite teams suffered the first casualty. It was a sniper's shot fired from a concealed weapon that penetrated his armor and shield. Position a shot that should have been impossible to hit, but the elite's advanced shields had failed to deflect it. Sniper was a mystery that was invisible, elusive, and incredibly precise. And the elites couldn't determine the source of the shot, and additional casualties quickly followed, each winning a calculated attack. The sniper was not only eliminating soldiers, but also destroying their elites, who had previously felt invincible behind their shields and cutting-edge technology. Tweety started to question their superiority. Each killing served as a reminder that humans were employing strategy in addition to force, beginning to adjust to the battlefield in ways that even the most highly skilled elites were unable to anticipate. The sniper's presence resonate across the ranks of the elite, their members' waning confidence growing. Aware that the next shot might be their last, they hesitantly take slower steps while scanning their surroundings. One human soldier was now pursuing the dominant force that had easily destroyed entire civilizations. When the elites decided to step up their tactics and sent in more specialist units, they made their first error. Armed with vitality, these soldiers were prepared to combat the most deadly enemies as Iliad warriors. Obstacles, heat-seeking drones, and neuroprocessors that could frighteningly accurately forecast the actions of the adversary were positive that no matter how good the sniper was, they couldn't escape the combined power of their elite forces. But the sniper was prepared, since he had been watching their movements, figuring out their patterns, and discovering their weaknesses. Training involved more than simply accuracy. It also involved taking advantage of the jungle's weaknesses. It was his ruthless ally, and he used the terrain to guide them farther into the thick foliage. Their technology worked against them. The drones were useless, since they were obscured by the dense greenery and warped by the TLs. While strong external snipers were able to calculate distractions that the energy barriers couldn't protect themselves from the shots that targeted their vulnerabilities, the elites quickly discovered they were being drawn into an outer space barrier that seemed to call for an outer space portal. The sniper's careful bullets caused the maximum amount of damage in the ever-tightening trap. Each time the elites believed they had him trapped, they caused damage with little exposure. Every time they believed they had a foothold on his location, he slipped away and vanished into the darkness. His shots were incredibly accurate and lethal, leaving them with nothing but empty air and mounting fury. Their sense of invulnerability made it obvious that the sniper was not your typical person. He was not just a soldier, he operated with a level of competence and expertise that is beyond the standards of the elite. With all of their technology, he was a strategist and a natural force that the elites, despite their resources, a lone man with a rifle and local knowledge, was outshining them. The elites had underestimated people, believing that superior technology would help them overcome their declining numbers. Their technology would easily overcome any opposition. Nevertheless, they neglected to take human adaptation into account. In addition to engaging in combat with the soldiers, the sniper forced them to confront their own vulnerabilities, and for the first time in centuries, no amount of sophisticated technology could defeat the galactic elites in that regard. They discovered themselves on the defensive because of their arrogance and belief that triumph was certain. The human sniper turned out to be their biggest error. A sniper, a lone human soldier in the center of that resistance, had changed the course of the conflict with nothing. More than talent, perseverance, and an unwavering determination to live in the galaxy, elites started to understand that this wasn't just another war. They added conquest to their agenda, since they had undervalued people and now they were suffering. And as the conflict continued, they realized they had to reconsider all the elites. A nation still deeply perplexed by the development of the galactic elites, who believed they understood their role in the cosmos, started to decline, as their what had begun as a straightforward operation to eliminate a dispersed number of human warriors had suffered significant losses. Becoming a nightmare because of their superior technology and the enormous amount of people. They were methodically dismantled by a lone human shooter. The sniper's capacity to stay hidden and deliver lethal protection. The elites had already paid considerably more for accuracy and disappearing without a trace than they were prepared to acknowledge, and the more the elephant got away with the locked onto the sniper, the more the elephant got confused about their technology was so successful against other species, the more they attempted to react. Ineffective here, their drones with the newest tracking technologies were unable to capture an energy shields that could deflect the majority of incoming missiles, were able to lock onto the sniper position. Useless against the sniper's well-timed shots, even their improved fighting units that were genetically modified to hijack. At first, optimal performance was having trouble adjusting to a foe that refused to fight by any traditional rules. The sniper's achievement was viewed by elites as a lucky shot. But as the days went by, the pattern became indisputable, with each ambush becoming more sophisticated, intentional. It wasn't a lone soldier sniping survivors. Rather, it was a methodically planned tactic that exploited the terrain, elite technology's limits, and their tactics' shortcomings to the fullest. The sniper wasn't emergency management. In addition to being a soldier, he was a strategist who recognized the importance of patience and accuracy, which the elites valued, started to modify their strategy, or at the very least, they made an effort to more specialized troops were dispatched in groups, created especially to find elusive targets. These soldiers were using the most cutting-edge technology available. Their neural interfaces enabled them to anticipate opponent actions while concealing weapons that could level vast areas of the jungle, and gadgets that made them almost undetectable. Although even this didn't ensure victory, because the sniper was constantly one step ahead of each fail. Gradually, the elite's haughtiness started to wane. They had thought they were unbeatable and confident in their technology, could manage any difficulty, regardless of how unforeseen. But the sharpshooter had broke the idea that he wasn't following their norms, which the elites found unacceptable. They believed that warfare was a science that required superior firepower, tactics, and technology to solve. They were unable to comprehend the conflict between the elite commanders, since snipers had transformed it into an art form. Their reports were replete with doubts and inquiries about what was going on. 2. Their troops. How could one human soldier continue to do so much harm? Examined their losses, going over the data repeatedly, but it became evident that they weren't experiencing a fluke. Something new. An adversary that used brains, agility, and a refusal to be outmatched instead of brute force. The elite started to turn on one another, with some calling for an all-out attack and others supporting greater brute force. Others maintained that a more methodical and tactical approach was required, but the internal conflict only made the uncertainty, and it quickly became evident that the battlefield was more than just a site of fighting. It was a place where their leadership was failing, their unity was shattered, and the elite's basic conception of war was being questioned. The course of combat was now determined by humans, with one elite commander in particular developed an obsession with killing the sniper, whose reputation had been established by putting down uprisings. However, this commander was now humiliating his troops with just one human. Once self-assured and aloof, he was now driven to demonstrate that his species was, in fact, the superior force. He started ignoring his officers' advice and moving forward with riskier tracking techniques. The already confused elites found themselves pursuing the sharpshooter. The longer they pursued the sniper, the more they would lose this obsession. The more they manipulated him, the more he understood their strategies, flaws, and blind spots. Each time they believed they had him surrounded, but he had already left, leaving behind only chaos and growing casualties. Was about the elite's inability to adjust, not simply the sniper anymore. They had failed to adapt when confronted with an adversary who refused to play by their rules, and they had undervalued humanity. rules in a last-ditch effort, the commander of the elite ordered a full-scale attack with the remaining elite forces to try to permanently overwhelm the sniper. But by that time, the sniper's influence had caused damage. The humans had gained territory, and their morale had soared. Dispersed across their ranks, making each soldier a danger to the elites, and their rush to establish their supremacy had produced the exact conditions that guaranteed their defeat. It wasn't only their sniper prowess that had led them to fail at this moment. Humanity's capacity to adjust, improvise, and defend. Despite overwhelming odds, the elites believed they would be unstoppable due to their technological supremacy. However, they had failed to consider a crucial element, the enemy's will, and now the elites' forced retreat demonstrated that humanity weren't only surviving. They were defeating the sharpshooter, a representation of human tenacity and strategic skill. Had changed the course, the elites realized for the first time the actual nature of human control. They realized for the first time the actual nature of inaccuracy. The adversary had recklessly miscalculated the change in the battle's tide. Once certain of their utter superiority, the elites now found themselves in a battle for existence against an adversary. They had misjudged the sharpshooter, whose name was unknown, who turned out to be more than just a proficient marksman. He had evolved into a representation of human tenacity and a reminder that despite insurmountable obstacles, humanity was able to adapt, battle, and, most importantly, survive. The elites had made a crucial mistake by believing that their technology would ultimately ensure triumph. Their superiority could not be guaranteed by their superior weaponry or invincible shields, but rather by their capacity to read the battlefield and exercise critical thought. At this point, humanity's surprising inventiveness and the sniper's success didn't just come from their exceptional ability to improvise under pressure. To interfere with the elite's daily operations, it destroyed their entire perspective on the world, which they had dominated for ages. The galaxy easily destroyed civilizations, and their empire was founded on the conviction that no species could ever pose a long-term threat to them because of their technology, knowledge, and they were invulnerable due to their sheer force. But the human spy had demonstrated that regardless of how sophisticated their instruments were, there was still susceptible to the unpredictability of battle. It wasn't only about technology or power. Was about flexibility, and humanity possessed it in spades. While the aristocracy was before recognized for, they had to reorganize quickly because, to their brutality and accuracy, they attempted to rely on their troops. The sharpshooter knew the land, understood that the doctrine which had worked for millennia wasn't functioning. The enemy's limitations and, more crucially, knew how to take advantage of their flaws that the elites were unable to. They had become too dependent on their technological ideas to manage the environment the way they were used to, thinking it would protect them from the unknown, but they had overlooked a fundamental reality about humans and nature. As their forces diminished, the elites started to make desperate decisions because ingenuity was an uncontrollable force. They dispatched their best hunters, each one genetically enhanced, specifically to hunt down strong enemies. These troops were meant to be the ideal defense against the sniper's guerrilla tactics. Outfitted with heat-seeking sensors, specialized cloaking systems, and weaponry that can level even the hardest of adversaries. But it was irrelevant because the sniper had already figured out how to interfere with their most advanced, thinking it would protect them from the unknown, but they had overlooked a fundamental reality about humans and nature. As their forces diminished, the elites started to make desperate decisions because ingenuity was an uncontrollable force. They dispatched their best hunters, each one genetically enhanced, specifically to hunt down strong enemies. These troops were meant to be the ideal defense against the sniper's guerrilla tactics. Outfitted with heat-seeking sensors, specialized cloaking systems, and weaponry that can level even the hardest of adversaries. But it was irrelevant because the sniper had already figured out how to interfere with their most advanced. He was aware that technology, no matter how sophisticated, might be overpowered by the appropriate strategies, which is just what he was doing. The more the elite's unity started to erode, the further they ventured into the jungle, And Sniper's success wasn't only salient with the jungle, they were supporting a battle they wouldn't need to fight. They had been taught that victory was certain in every battle, but they had never done it before. They would always defeat resistance with their strength, but the shooter had caused them to doubt everything since he was a human. Soldier facing an entire elite force, and the longer he managed to avoid being apprehended, the gaps in the elite's confidence grew. Stories of the galactic elite's commanders being in disarray increased. From the field were inconsistent, full of reports of M-targets' unsuccessful attempts and inexplicable fatalities. Yet no distinct strategy emerged from the confusion, and the conflict became more fractured the longer it lasted. Their leadership changed, and there was no one best course of action since, for the first time, the elites were battling an adversary that had no strategy they had ever seen before, and human tactics were flexible and adaptable. The sniper's ability to make every encounter feel like a defeat and their unrelenting effectiveness in taking advantage of their flaws merely increased the level of uncertainty among the highest echelons. But in the meantime, humans felt more confident as they carried on to withstand their self-assurance, which grew as a result of the sniper's successful and unrelenting attack that they witnessed personally. How courage, adaptation, and determination might bring down even the strongest opponents. Once undervalued and considered inconsequential, were battling an adversary that had no strategy they had ever seen before, and human tactics were flexible and adaptable. The sniper's ability to make every encounter feel like a defeat and their unrelenting effectiveness in taking advantage of their flaws merely increased the level of uncertainty among the highest echelons. But in the meantime, humans felt more confident as they carried on to withstand their self-assurance, which grew as a result of the sniper's successful and unrelenting attack that they witnessed personally. How courage, adaptation, and determination might bring down even the strongest opponents. Once undervalued and considered inconsequential, human forces started to unite around the notion that victory was Sniper, not only against the odds, but also against an empire that had previously viewed them as a nuisance, had motivated an entire army in addition to eliminating a few top warriors. He had demonstrated to them that using force effectively was more important than the quantity or power of the weaponry, what you had, and the lengths you were prepared to go to in order to safeguard what was important in their last-ditch effort to restore order. The elites organized their strongest forces and advanced in a full-scale offensive, resolved to eradicate humanity permanently. But by this time, it was too late. The sharpshooter had already swung the scales in favor of the humans, and their resistance knew that pushing forward was the only way to survive. Therefore, they were ready to fight with everything they had, not retreat. The elites were unaware that the conflict had never really been about technology or raw might. Power. It was about the spirit of a people who would not submit to oppression, who would not even give up. The sharpshooter had become the personification of such spirit when confronted with the most formidable obstacles. The galactic elites had discovered that he had faced the power of an empire and swung the tide in his people's favor. The hard way, that human willpower cannot be replaced by any amount of technology, no matter how sophisticated, as it became evident that this conflict would not be won by force alone as the elites withdrew, humiliated and broken. Victory for humanity, one that would reverberate throughout the galaxy, and the human sniper was at its core. Even the smallest armies could take on the most powerful empires, as demonstrated by the soldier who had defied the unimaginable. For the first time, the galactic elites realized that their biggest error was underestimating humanity. The galactic elites had never come across an altered situation, and there was no turning back. Such an adversary had forced their will on weaker species for generations. They had subdued entire star systems using overwhelming power and technological superiority. With minimal effort, they destroyed civilizations that dared to oppose them. The idea of failure was that a foreign victory was inevitable rather than possible. However, all changed with a single human sharpshooter. The elites' conceit was their downfall. They had dismissed humanity as a primitive species that they had was unable to mount any meaningful defense. Thought their superior tactics and advanced weapons would quickly crush the human military, which was only a formality. What they failed to foresee in any attempt at rebellion was the tenaciousness of human resolve and the relentless. A single soldier amid millions, the sniper's inventiveness might transform the most dire circumstances into victory, became a representation of human defiance. His acts were a direct challenge, rather than merely tactical triumphs. Every shot he fired and every soldier he killed added to the elite's sense of power, broke the elite's faith in their own invincibility, and eroded their confidence. In addition to fighting a war, the sniper was changing the laws of combat and demonstrating to the elites that no amount of technology might take the role of a human mind that is flexible enough to adjust, improvise. A mind in battle with excellence and skills beyond any he had ever fought, our savior mastered the art of mind battlefield. With his deep understanding of the terrain, the sniper transformed the surroundings into a weapon in human hands. Once viewed as a challenge to be conquered, the thick jungle's terrain became a battlefield. With his deep understanding of the terrain, the sniper transformed the surroundings into a weapon in human hands. Hazardous labyrinth for the elites, who were always battling for their lives rather than engaging in combat. The elites couldn't adjust to being outwitted by an adversary that was constantly one step ahead. More force was sent in response to the new tactics, including elite soldiers and specialist hunters. But these efforts only made matters worse by meeting every subsequent wave of assaults with the same lethal precision. You was going after the core basis of elite dominance, not just soldiers. Their strict tactics, excessive reliance on technology, and incapacity to think creatively were all being revealed as flaws. Each setback compounded the previous one until the ruling class was compelled to face the unpleasant reality that they had undervalued humanity to the point where they were unable to reverse the decline of the elite. Once their commanders were resolute and unflinching, their confidence spread, discovered that they were paralyzed by uncertainty and unable to foresee the next move of an adversary who refused to follow their observations. Instead, the humans had not only interfered with their activities, but also completely destroyed the elite's strategy. For the technological advantage of the elite has always been their strength in warfare, yet in this instance, that very supremacy was the sniper's biggest weakness, which caused the elite's losses to transform their greatest asset into their demise, mounted their leadership, causing the formerly cohesive chain of command to break apart. Disorganized, lacking a single strategy and a defined direction. None of the commander's theories about how to handle the situation appeared to be working, as they had anticipated, that human beings would be crushed by raw power, but ultimately their inability to adapt caused them to lose. They had grown so mired in their own dogmatic thinking that they were unable to deal with an adversary who worked on a totally distinct wavelength. Yet, humanity's determination only made the sniper's deeds had given the entire human race, not just the men who fought with him, the notion that the idea that one person might challenge the power of an empire and hold his own became a rallying cry for all people. The sniper's struggle against the elites was not merely for survival, rather it was for something bigger, for the entire notion that humanity could resist the galactic elite's immense power, and as the elites fought to stop the harm, it became evident that humanity was about to change the course in the last phases of the conflict. The leaders were outmaneuvered and had to withdraw, their pride and authority destroyed. One human soldier outwitted and eventually defeated them, but it wasn't just a practice. The galactic elite's tactical defeat was a moral and psychological one. Leaders had been brought low by their own conceit and inability to acknowledge the actual power of their adversaries.